Hi, my name is Jonathan Schober, and I take no pleasure in the recording that I'm about to make. It involves a very serious topic and a very serious conversation. It's a topic and a conversation that I am personally connected to and involved with. I'm recording this in January of 2024. It involves what became public in April of 2023, so 9 months ago, this became public, and that is that there was a sexual and spiritual abuse scandal within the Assemblies of God, and specifically Chi Alpha Ministries, Chi Alpha Campus Ministries in College Stations. As I said, I'm personally connected with this as a father. My daughter, who has posted publicly about her involvement in surviving this abuse. So I'm very concerned as a father. I also have family that is in leadership positions in the Assemblies of God. I've had very candid conversation with family members, with friends of the family for years, and unfortunately those conversations from my perspective have been difficult. I do appreciate the people that have spoken with me, but I've had candid conversations that I believe that the way that this has been handled has been completely inappropriate. And as we've learned more towards the end of 2023, what we are seeing is not that this just happened and was made aware in April, but this situation was known for months and months and years before this and was allowed to continue. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play a message from a pastor, Pastor Randy Weaver, Lone Star Cowboy Church in Montgomery, Texas. I don't know Pastor Randy personally. I assume that he is a good man and a fine pastor, but I am extremely concerned with what he's going to say. And we're going to go through this message kind of line by line on it. I'm concerned that there is a lot of disinformation, a lot of facts that are not correct in the message. I'm also very concerned that there are some underlying principles and theology that is extremely dangerous and certainly is not in my understanding of the doctrinal principles of the Assemblies of God. Now, I am not a pastor. Many years ago, I did hold credentials with the Assemblies of God for a very brief period of time, but I am not a pastor. I have never been a professional pastor. I did grow up in a preacher's home. My father was, I guess you would say, is still an Assemblies of God minister. I'm very honored, very proud of our spiritual heritage that our family has. Some of you watching, if you look up my name, you will probably know who my family is. Very proud of that. But I'm very disappointed at what's going on. So let's go ahead, let's take a listen to Pastor Randy. Oh, just by the way, as I'm recording this, I did earlier today, I called Pastor Randy to try to speak to him and talk to him about this message. As of this recording, have not heard from him. If he does respond, I will update this video or this post with any response that I receive from Pastor Randy. So we're going to take a listen to this, and let's see what is said, and let's see if there's anything we can learn from it. I just want to step in here for a few minutes. I filmed this video about a week ago, and after filming it, I reached out to Pastor Randy. I sent him this video that you're about to watch, and the other day I sat down with him and his wife, Pastor Darla, at their church in Montgomery, Texas, and I had about a 2.5-hour conversation with them. I'll provide some comments at the end of this video related to that meeting, but I just wanted to say up front that I thank Pastor Randy and his wife, Pastor Darla, for taking the time to speak with me. I do think that this video is still an important video. I think that it is still a conversation worth having, so I'm going to go ahead and continue to post this video. But I want to say up front that Pastor Randy and Pastor Darla certainly showed me respect and honor by allowing us to have this conversation. So with that, let's go ahead and continue this video.
If you don't get anything else I say this morning, I want you to get what I'm about to say, because this is the message in a sentence. If God is going to make you like Jesus Christ, you're going to develop his character, that spiritual maturity. If God's going to make you like Jesus Christ, then he's going to take you through everything that Jesus went through. Whoa. There were times when Jesus was tired. You can expect that. There were times when Jesus was misunderstood. You can expect that. There were times when Jesus was lonely and sad and angry. You can expect that. There were times when Jesus' patience was tested. You can expect that. There were times when...
Let's stop right there. Of course we know that bad things are going to happen to people. The Christian life is no promise of a life filled without pain, without suffering, without bad things happening. Just look at the story of Job. And the story of Job is, why does bad things happen to good people? It is something that has questioned people for centuries, for millennium. We know that bad things happen to good people. We know that sometimes it just happens because of the nature of things. But as we're going to get into this, and I think here's the danger, sir, Pastor Randy, with all due respect, sometimes bad things happen to people, to good people who make bad decisions.
He was put down and hurt and maligned. You know what malign means? It's defined to make evil, harmful, and even untrue statements about, speak evil of. He even said, unless we take up our cross and follow him, we cannot be a part of his kingdom.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about malign. You're dropping in the word malign. Sir, I think that you are speaking to me about that. I think that you are speaking to people that have openly questioned what is going on. With all due respect, that is not maligning anyone. For the record, I have had leaders come into me and to my face challenge me and say, "You're maligning these people." All I'm doing is asking questions. Now, I have no doubt there's websites that are out there, and I have no doubt that there are people that are maligned, but that is not what's at the root of the issue. This is not an issue of people maligning others. Let me be very clear. I am a friend to the Assemblies of God. I spent my whole life in the Assemblies of God. I have family in the Assemblies of God. I have no axe to grind with the Assemblies of God. Sir, when you ask challenging questions, and as we get into the serious nature of what's going on, questions about children that were sexually abused, questions about members of a congregation, members of a ministry being spiritually abused and manipulated. That's not maligning others. And sir, with all due respect, if you think that I have maligned you or maligned these people, answer my phone call. Let's talk about it.
We, in our church here, we support a lot of missionaries. And in the Chi Alpha world, we probably have, I don't even know exactly how many Chi Alpha missionaries we support, probably 10 or 15 of them. And in the Chi Alpha world, it was born and birthed in Huntsville.
Okay, let's stop here. One of the reasons why this is so important, one of the reasons why this is such a big deal is you're exactly right. The Chi Alpha was born and birthed in Huntsville, in College Station. This is the epicenter of Chi Alpha. And so if we can see a track record of people that have made bad decisions, of people who have frankly enabled evil people, and we see that that's happening at the literal genesis of this ministry, that should be of extreme importance. This might be a different conversation if this was just some random campus ministry out there in the middle of nowhere, not connected. But the people that we're going to be talking about were the directors of Chi Alpha. They were the golden children of Chi Alpha. This deserves our attention. It deserves our respect because you're exactly right. What is now Chi Alpha very much started in Huntsville and in College Station. So let's see what's going on there. And if there have been issues that have been ignored, that have been covered up, we need to bring those to light, because it is highly likely that these bad decisions, bad patterns, in some cases illegal and abusive, have trickled down way beyond. Sir, I'm sure that you have friends and family that have had and suffered through cancer. We know that if cancer strikes at your heart or at your brain, it's extremely critical. It affects the whole body. I can cut off a leg. If my leg has cancer, I can cut it off. If the core, if the heart, if the place of the beginning has cancer, we need to be concerned about that.
Now there's missionaries all over the world through the ministry of Chi Alpha. Well, a few years back, there was a guy that came up through the Chi Alpha ministry, and he was ministering to the Chi Alpha people. And you know, just about every organization has a Judas in it.
Pastor Randy, I don't know where you have gotten your information, but that is a complete misrepresentation of the facts. You're going to talk about this in a minute. You're referring to Daniel Savala. This is not some guy who a few years ago came up and turned out to be a pedophile. That's not an accurate representation. This is a person who was convicted of abusing, sexually assaulting children in 2012. This is a person who was known by leadership to have this conviction, to be a registered sex offender, and allowed to come in to Texas. In fact, we will go through some of these people. Some of these people literally wrote letters in support of Daniel Savala. He was known. This was not just some guy that rose up and, oh, wow, it happened. No, it was known as far back as 2012 that he was a convicted pedophile, a registered sex offender. And sir, leadership in the Assemblies of God and in Chi Alpha knew about this and allowed him to continue.
Well, you know, just about every organization has a Judas in it.
Well, I am glad that you do recognize that Daniel Savala is a Judas. Daniel Savala has done evil, horrible things. There's no questions about that. But his track record was known, and he was allowed in.
Y'all with me? It's kind of a normal thing. I mean, Jesus even. This guy came out, he was in the organization, he turns out to be a sexual predator.
Sir, Judas, to our knowledge, did not do anything while he was in the ministry of Jesus. To our knowledge, Jesus did not know, in a strong sense, that he was going to be the betrayer until later. This person was known. They didn't hire Judas. They didn't bring Judas into the discipleship. Oh, you are a convicted felon for extortion, and you robbed the last church that you were a part of. Come on in. And yet that's exactly what Eli Goutreau, Eli Stewart, Scott Martin, the Assemblies of God at large, that's exactly what they did in regards to Daniel Savala.
The organization, he turns out to be a sexual predator. And it's a terrible thing. So there's litigation, all kinds of things going on through this organization. Well,
I have to really control myself. Do you realize what you just said? He just turned out to be a sexual predator, and literally with your hand. That's a terrible thing. Oh my God. He abused children. My Bible says it'd be better to have a millstone hung around your neck and be cast into the sea than that you harm one of these little ones. This man, and we're going to find some pastors as well, abused children. Perhaps my voice would be less loud. My emotions would be less raised if this was not the umpteenth time that I have heard a pastor from the stage, from a pulpit. It's a terrible thing. Doug Clay, General Superintendent of the Assemblies of God, has called this entire thing at the General Council a, quote, hiccup. Just something that happens in ministry. Really? How many pedophiles do you have in your ministry? How often are people abused in your ministry that it's just a hiccup or a terrible thing? I'll continue because I might say things that I might regret.
some of the Chi Alpha people were involved with this sexual predator, but there's a whole boatload of them that weren't involved with him.
Okay, now let's get down to the details. Let's just talk about some of the people that were involved directly with Daniel Savala. Person that you have rightly called a Judas. The person that you know has been a predator of children. Let's talk about one of those people that was involved with Daniel Savala. It's Eli Goutreau. I have a letter here dated on July 18th, 2012. Daniel Savala had been tried for abusing children in Alaska. The sentencing was coming out. And Eli Goutreau, a credentialed minister with the Assemblies of God, wrote this letter. I'm just going to read it in its entirety. These are some of the people that were involved with Daniel Savala. Our dear friend, Daniel needs you to write a letter. This is from 2012, 12 years ago. Daniel Savala has been accused of sexual misconduct that does not involve contact. Does it matter that it doesn't involve contact? Let's just step back here for a second. In what universe does a minister of the gospel write an appeal letter about a pedophile? Maybe if he knew with 100% certainty. But my God, the fact that he did this, the fact that no one questioned, the fact that nobody said, hey Eli, probably not the best idea to write a letter supporting a pedophile. Might want to talk to some people about that. But no, they don't do that. And then his opening line as a minister of the gospel is, Daniel Savala has been accused of sexual misconduct that does not involve contact. As if that's supposed to be a big deal. Oh, he didn't actually touch anyone. He didn't actually. Last I checked, my Bible says, if you have lust in your heart, you've committed adultery. Eli Gutro would make sure, no contact, which allegedly took place over 15 years ago in Alaska. These accusations have come from two men who are now in their 30s, and there are quite a few questions about these guys' own past and candor. Oh, the victims are the problem. They're the ones not telling the truth. Sir, as we're going to go through this, I'm going to ask you now, Pastor Randy, have you talked to any of the people that were abused as a part of Chi Alpha? Have you talked to my daughter who was spiritually abused in Chi Alpha? And I use her because she has publicly posted about it. With help from a number of day friends, which probably include, I'm assuming this is a number of dear friends, which probably includes you, we were able to hire a fantastic lawyer who has been working diligently. As the lawyer has communicated, one of the families of the men has a lot of clout in the community there, and the attorney we have here in Texas believes that has a lot to do with the charges that have been filed. My God. My God. Who let a pastor write this? Daniel was taken into custody earlier this year and served nearly 2 months in jail in Alaska. Unfortunately, his mother, who he has loved so dearly and gave constant care, went to be with Jesus during the time. Oh, aren't we so sad? The cruelty of these allegations are comprised of words only. There is no physical evidence to substantiate them, yet there is a real risk of Daniel spending the rest of his life in jail over what we believe is an absolute attack of the devil on his life. In issues of sexual abuse, especially in ministries, there's rarely physical evidence. That's what makes it so horrible and sickening, and why any minister of the gospel should be on high alert for this kind of activity. But no physical evidence, nothing to see here. Again, remember, he's already been 2 months in jail in Alaska. Our lawyer has seen the evidence the prosecution has and believes there are enough inconsistencies and holes in the statements of the two men to vindicate Daniel completely. Wow, that's pretty strong words. Just curious, from the time that this letter was written in 2012, did your friend Eli Gutro, was Daniel vindicated? Clearly not. However, with these sorts of accusations in the state of Alaska, there's always the risk of a bad result, as well as a huge burden of expense to pursue a trial. Even more than that, Daniel has recounted how Jesus was silent before his accusers through the though the allegations were false. This is just like your thing about, bad things happen to good people. Well, maybe he was silent not because he was like Jesus, but because he knew, don't testify against yourself. Every single thing that Jesus did, I can show you an example of someone doing that exact same thing for wrong reasons. I am expecting a minister of the gospel, a credentialed minister in the Assemblies of God, to have enough wisdom and insight to say, just because someone is silent like Jesus doesn't mean they're like Jesus. For the record, if you're upset that I am passionate and perhaps a bit angry in this recording, I will remind you that Jesus flipped tables. And I will let others judge whether or not I am being like Jesus. Daniel does not want to bring the kind of hurt and pain in these guys' lives that has been brought into his life by the false statements. Additionally, these two men now have families. Although our lawyer has found enough about each man to shred their testimonies in court, well, a wonderful lawyer we have here, it wouldn't be without consequence to their families, and Daniel does not want to hurt others on his own account. Sir, this is the person that you call a Daniel. Let me read for you the next sentence with emphasis. Eli Gutro, July 18th, 2012. Quote, Daniel is probably more godly than I am. The epicenter of Chi Alpha, the leader of Chi Alpha, in 12 years ago, did not have enough discernment to recognize the Judas that was Daniel Savala, even though he was already arrested and convicted. And at no point, we could forgive. We've all said things in defense of our friends and our family that was wrong. And we could forgive at some point if Eli and some of these others realized, I made a mistake. I did, in fact, misjudge Daniel. But for 12 years, year after year after year after year, no growth, no maturity, no wisdom. Daniel Savala, Papa Daniel, send people to him, not a problem. And by the way, as we're going to show, this came up and was brought to attention as far back as 2018. And still nothing. Instead, Daniel would rather let the real trial happen before the judgment seat of Jesus and pray for deliverance for everyone involved. The prosecutor knows his case is on admittedly contradictory testimony, but apparently feels that he must pursue under pressure from the family involved and has offered a plea bargain of time served in jail, plus up to an additional month in jail if Daniel pleads guilty. Daniel's heart is to gladly choose the minimal amount of time in jail over the ugliness, hurt, and expense of a messy courtroom battle. Well, no kidding. Convicted pedophile and you get 3 months in jail? Yeah, that's an easy deal. And by the way, I would ask Eli Gutro and Sir Pastor Randy, did you talk to any of these victims? Or is this just what the lawyer said? Because of course, lawyers never lie. In addition to updating you on what is going on, I am also writing with a request. The sentencing hearing will be in approximately 8 weeks, and at that time it will be the judge's ultimate decision to accept the plea bargain. The judge is not bound by the plea deal, and so we need to write letters to show him a glimpse of Daniel's true character, so that we will know there is zero risk of Daniel harming anyone. I understand. loyalty to friends and family. As I've said, I'm caught in the middle. I have family that I've had to have some very hard and difficult conversations. Some conversations where I've said, I think you're wrong. I think you're handling this incorrectly. Oftentimes, our biggest weakness is the overplaying of our greatest strength. I understand the family of the Assemblies of God. It's a good thing. I understand that we are a fellowship and not a denomination. I'm sure that both of us can count probably more pastors who are sons and grandsons of pastors than first-generation pastors. Most pastors went to Bible school together. They've served in ministry for years and years and years. They know each other. They married kids together, and that's good. It does help keep the drama down. It does help keep unity. But there are times when relying on those friendships, when relying on those things that we think that we know, assuming that because we heard it from our friend, it must be right, it must be so. And recognizing that I don't want to have a hard conversation with my family. But Pastor Randy, sometimes hard conversations are exactly what's needed, even if family feelings get hurt. The judge has a very limited view of Daniel's life, and our lawyers has asked us to write letters to the judge appealing for leniency and showing what Daniel means to us. Judge Carey needs to see Daniel's character in terms of the positive influence he has on others and the sacrificial way he pours his life out as an offering. I keep asking, where are the adults in the room? Where are the adults that said to this Eli Goutreau 12 years ago, now I'm going to presume that Eli is roughly my age. I'm guessing that he's in his 50s, so at the time of this writing, he was probably late 40s, or probably in his 40s, maybe late 30s. He certainly wasn't a kid by any means. But where were some of the elders? Where were some of the adults in the room saying, Eli, you are going way out on a limb here? And then how many other people did he go out on a limb about that he was wrong about and caused hurt? Again, he says he needs to be convinced that Daniel's character is, in reality, above approach, and that Daniel would never harm a child or anyone else in any, and that's in all caps, in any way. If you have children and would be comfortable having Daniel stay in your home or having your children at Daniel's house, the judge needs to know that. We now know that you'd be a fool. Judge Carey needs to know if contact with Daniel has brought you closer to the Lord, etc. So Daniel was considered this great man of God because he had a whole bunch of books. Old dead guys, I think they called them. He talked the right talk. He said all of the right things. He had a bookshelf with all the right authors on it. Going to another Bible verse, it says that we are to be wise as serpents and gentle as doves. Sir, we are way too much gentle as doves. And we don't have nearly enough wisdom of serpent if we're allowing this kind of stuff to happen and continue to happen and continue to not be addressed, continue to be washed under the carpet, continue to preach sermons about, I'm just being maligned. This is about what an upstanding citizen Daniel is and why Daniel should not receive a harsh sentence. However, this is not about slamming the men who made the allegations of the judicial process. Oh, isn't that sweet? Isn't that nice? We're not going to slam the victims. We're not going to say the victims are maligning our dear friend Daniel. That was in capital. However, this is not about slamming the men who have made these allegations of the judicial process. Be positive about Daniel, but not negative about others. On that, we can agree. So we need you to write a letter this week to appeal for leniency for Daniel. These letters will help the judge understand who Daniel is as a human apart from these men's accusations. Goes on to give some instructions. This was written by Eli Gutro. It was also sent by Eli Stewart, who is also at the center of this, to the point who have been the leaders, the go-to people for Chi Alpha, the genesis point. This is what they wrote.
Now there's organizations out there trying to do away with Chi Alpha. They're trying to take them out because there's one guy.
I'm going to assume that you probably mean XA Lion's Den. Sir, how many pastors have been arrested in the last 18 months for sexual abuse? How many AG pastors have been arrested in the last 18 months for sexual abuse? Sir, how many Chi Alpha campus pastors in Texas have been arrested in the last 18 months for sexual abuse of children? I'm not even talking about Daniel Savala. If you don't know, we have here the count. If you don't know, the count is 2 Chi Alpha pastors. This is in addition to Daniel Savala. First one, William C. Robinson, a pastor working for Chi Alpha Campus Ministries in Corpus Christi, was booked in the Nueces County Jail early Monday morning. This is from July 11th, 2022. Robinson is charged with continuous sexual abuse of a child, a first-degree felony. He pleaded not guilty to the charge on Monday. That's one pastor. Then we have a former Baylor University campus ministry and the convicted sex offender he described as his spiritual mentor were indicted Thursday on charges they sexually abused 2 young boys over a 2-year period. A McLennan County grand jury indicted Christopher Hundell, 38, and Daniel Savala, 67, each on 1 count of continuous trafficking. Folks, we're talking about child sex trafficking. of persons, first-degree felonies punishable by a minimum of 25 years in prison, without parole, up to life without parole. Hundell, who was freed from jail on May 24th after posting $50,000 bond, served since, by the way, this is written September 14th, 2023. Hundell served since 2019 as a campus minister for Chi Alpha chapter, a campus Christian fellowship group at Baylor. That's two pastors. That's two pastors and one guy arrested. Oh, but John, they've only been arrested. Aren't they, don't we presume innocence? I understand from a legal sense that's true. Really? Tell you what, Pastor Randy, since you're wondering about one guy, why don't you call up Pastor Robert Miller? Pastor Robert is the interim pastor for Mountain Valley Fellowship, right up the road from you in College Station. That was Eli Stewart's old church. He has taken over for Eli Stewart's old church. Why don't you just go ahead, just ask, pick up the phone. I'm sure you've got the directory. Why don't you just pick up the phone and just ask him, how many criminal investigations is he aware of? How many people is he aware are currently under investigation? Don't ask him for any names. I want to respect people's privacy. I'm not asking for you to out anybody, but just ask him, hey, how many people that are associated with Chi Alpha are currently being criminally investigated? If he says he doesn't know of any of them, he's lying to you. And I have that on tape.
And I'll tell you too, Eli Gotro, you remember he preaches here some. He is the leader. Him and Mary were the ones who actually started the Chi Alpha program. Now, they're trying to take Eli and Mary out. He's on our board here at the church.
I know that this message was preached on November 5th. Since then, I have seen with my own two eyes that Eli Gutro is no longer eligible to receive missions funding from the Assemblies of God. I believe, and I have been told by multiple sources, that his credentials have been pulled.
And he called me up and he told me about all this stuff that's going on. He said, Randy, he said, I'll step down if you don't want to be in the middle of all this. I understand. I said, Eli, I want you to stay on this board because you're not in the middle of this stuff. You don't have this stuff coming to you, and we will not participate in what the devil's trying to do. The Bible says, touch not mine anointed. And I'm not going to mess up the good things that God is doing in Chi Alpha because a few bugs are always drawn to a good light.
My question, he's been dismissed. Is he still on your board? Just read the letter that he wrote. Tell you what, while you're asking some people some questions about judgment, discernment, wisdom, why don't you go ahead and call up some of the district leadership? South Texas, North Texas. Why don't you call them up? Why don't you ask them if they knew if Eli Stewart had assaulted anybody? And if they did anything about it? Let's find out. See how long they've known. Ask them if they promoted him, knowing that he had assaulted an intern.
And I just want everybody to know, Eli and Mary Gotro are good people.
They may be good people. But I do believe that they have failed in their leadership. And I do believe that they're not the only ones that have failed in their leadership. Read another scripture. Proverbs 18:17. The person who tells one side of a story seems right until someone else comes and asks questions. Been accused of maligning. What did I do? Simply ask questions. When I first started asking questions back in April and May, I was shocked. I assumed that this was unknown. I couldn't believe that this had been known. So I started asking some questions. Have you spoken to anybody? By the way, the AG on their very own website admits that they've known and were warned since 2018. See, one of those people that's maligning them wrote a letter to Scott Martin, who at the time was the national Chi Alpha minister. He, by the way, has resigned. We don't know why he's resigned. She writes, March 26, 2018, 5 years ago. It appears that Mr. Savala is very close to the leadership of Sam Houston Chi Alpha. I fear for the safety of these students. There is not much difference between a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old except for the law. Oh yeah, you want to know why some of these crimes aren't committed? Because some of them aren't crimes. If you abuse someone over 18, it's a whole lot more difficult to prove abuse. College students have many of the same vulnerabilities. I am also extremely concerned for the reputation of the ministry and ministers who too closely associate with such an individual, especially allowing him to have contact with young persons in any ministry or leadership capacity. This is most certainly not about forgiveness. It is about protecting one another. The whistleblower in 2018. Concerned for the reputation of the ministry and ministers. Pastor Randy, and I'm going to show you, this went to Scott Martin. It also went to Jeffrey Alexander. Correspondence also went Esther Bevis, Crystal Martin, Galen Clonch, Greg Hadley, Tim Barker, Don Wee. Every one of those people were warned by a whistleblower in 2018 that there's a problem. If any of those leaders had acted responsibly and immediately gotten to the bottom of this situation, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You would not be accusing me of maligning you. We'd all be happy. None of them. None of them. This is not about one bad actor, a bug to a good light. This is about repeated failure of leadership. I was talking to my family member about this early on, and I said some of these things. And this family member, speaking directly in reference to Scott Martin, this family member said, Scott Martin's a good guy. He's grieving. He's so sad about what happened. That's a minimum that every one of these people, I would expect nothing less. And yet that's supposed to be, well, they're sad, they're grieving, they wish it didn't happen. I'm not accusing any of these people of being bad, these leaders. I am asking questions about their leadership judgment. The fact that when they ignore things, pass things on, it trickles down. It allows an environment to continue. Just by the way, here's the response from Esther Wood, in part. General, I'll just read it because I think there's some. Here's someone in 2018, here's a whistleblower, warns them, and here's the response. Warm Christian greetings. General Superintendent Doug Clay read your email and forwarded it to me for response, since our office oversees credentialed ministers' issues. Thank you for sharing your concerns and being in touch. We can help you best by providing some clear direction on how these matters are handled and providing you with additional information. Obviously, we are very concerned about the situation you describe. Really? Even to this day, Doug Clay calls this situation that we now know happened a hiccup. You are probably not yet aware, but it is not under the purview of the General Counsel, National Office, to become involved in local church issues. Given that we have over 13,000 churches and 37,000 ministers, our governance is structured in such a way that local districts handle local situations. A known pedophile is in your ministry, is in your premier ministry. And let's punt it down to somebody else. Nothing to see here. You know, I spent 20 years at Dell. Dell is not some place that is known for spiritual maturity and insight. But you know what? If someone sent a letter like this to Michael Dell, Michael Dell made sure it got taken care of. Did he handle every single issue himself? Of course not. He had people like me do that. And he would send me an email, and you know what? He would follow up to make sure it got done. You've got a pedophile in your ministry, and your national leaders are punting it to the local districts. One says he's the most godly man that he knows. Nothing to see here. Look, I understand leadership. I've been an executive before. I understand that can't handle everything that comes through your desk. But my God, some issues that you handle. Some issues that you don't risk getting lost in the shuffle. I can also share with you that credentialed minister Reverend Eli R.J. Stewart in College Station, Texas are under the purview of the North Texas District Council. Reverend K. Eli Goutreau is under the purview of South Texas. Since the ministry have concerns about locating in North Texas District, I encourage you to respond with these letters to come to an appropriate resolution. The hearts of the district leaders are to do what is best for all their churches and ministers. I am confident its leadership is in place to assist with church ministry matters. With this email, we are notifying North Texas District Superintendent Galen Claunch and Secretary Greg Headley of the situation. And I am also notifying South Texas District Superintendent Tim Barker and Secretary Don Way. You're welcome to make contact with these leaders. Obviously, if you have knowledge of a child abuse and or an offender who is not registered, you may contact authorities directly. Thank you again for caring about and expressing your concerns in this situation. It is my prayer that a satisfactory conclusion can be discovered. We sit here 5.5 years later, and unfortunately, this is written by Donna Barrett. Unfortunately, Donna, no. In 5.5 years, a satisfactory conclusion has not yet been discovered, but I hope that it will.
You say, well, preacher, how come you're saying this? I'm saying this because there's a lot of preachers that don't ever get anything done for Jesus because they're lazy.
Transitioning a little bit, but I've got some real concerns, and this goes to the spiritual abuse that's going on. Sir, you are getting very close to talking about your salvation, your worth, and your value is determined by your works. Yeah, I know a lot of lazy people that haven't done anything, but you know what? I also know a lot of good people that are doing exactly what the Lord has called them to do. And they don't have big ministries. They don't have big numbers. As a pastor, as members of the Assemblies of God, I would hope that you recognize that the standard that we strive for is to simply say, hear the words, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Whatever God has called us to do, we did it. We are not going to hear, you got 300 people saved, you started 15 churches. That's not how it works in the kingdom. There's a whole lot of people that are doing what God has called them to do and don't have any numbers to show for it. And sir, for you to make the implication that because someone doesn't have a numbers, they're lazy, is that really what you mean? Is that really what you want your congregation to think?
But they never have any problems either because they don't ever do anything. Amen. Somebody's going to get something done, there's going to be problems along the way. But I'm going to tell you something. We have to appreciate, there's been churches that have taken their support away from Chi Alpha. And I told them, Lone Star Cowboy Church will not do that. We're gonna be wise about who we support, and we're not gonna support people that are perverse or nothing like that. But we're
Eli Goutreau, I just read you his letter. He's no longer eligible for funding. I think he's been dismissed. Are you going to continue to support him? And let me ask even more directly. You have made this public announcement and proclamation. Sir, I am asking for you. I am asking that you strongly reconsider what you're saying, what you're believing, what your perspective is. It is truly my prayer Well, first off, it's my prayer that I'm wrong. If I'm completely honest, it's my prayer that I'm wrong. If I'm not wrong, then my prayer is that you will look at the evidence, that you will use this wisdom that we talked about. Wise as serpents. You seem to be a good old boy. You're in a cowboy church. Because you're a pastor, I'll just simply say, is the manure getting a little thick? And I'll ask the question directly. If you find that my perspective is not one of maligning, but it is one of trying to help and trying to protect, are you going to make a public statement with this much passion, correcting the record? I hope so.
We're going to support people who are, we were in Greece. And our missionary in Greece, we saw them one night. They were concerned about all this because they came up through the Chi Alpha program. Really, really good people.
You're right. There's a lot of good people in Chi Alpha. You know, if there was some transparency to the investigation, there'd be a lot less frustration for a lot of people. These ministers in Greece, they're not hearing anything, and how much harm is being done to them? Are they potentially bringing people overseas that have been influenced by harmful teachings, who have been abused? It's not right to keep everyone in the silence. It's not right to keep everyone full of manure.
Yeah, you're going to have problems. If you ever get anything done, somebody's going to talk ugly about you. I don't know, you probably don't know this, probably can't even believe it, but I got people who don't like me. There's people who don't like me.
Pastor Randy, this is not about people talking ugly about Chi Alpha. And let's just talk about that for a second. You seem very concerned about Chi Alpha. Chi Alpha is not made in the image of God. There will come a day when Chi Alpha no longer exists. These people that have been abused, they were made in the image of God. These people that have been abused will spend eternity somewhere. And in some cases, that abuse will make it very difficult for them to choose a loving father, because their abuse was done at the hands of a minister. And as I'm listening to you, sir, with all due respect, it feels like you are more concerned about the reputation of Chi Alpha than the victims and survivors of abuse.
I got a little saying that says, while the dogs bark, the caravan moves on. We're not going to let the dogs stop us from doing what God has called us to do. We're not going to let the pain define us.
Let me share with you, I sent a text to Rick DuBose. Rick DuBose, as I'm sure you know, came from North Texas. He's the assistant superintendent of the general council. Rick is another person that I had very candid conversations, and I expressed my distress with how things were being handled. This was several months ago. He told me, John, I understand. In fact, I'll read the text in part. So I sent him a text shortly after General Council. I was referencing Doug Clay's comment of a hiccup. By the way, I have attempted to reach out to Doug Clay directly and no response. Rick apologizes for not getting with me. I understand. He says, our concern for the students, leadership, and Chi Alpha as a whole is very high. Our response is not at the pace or with the aggressiveness you would prefer, but is with those targets in focus. Yes, the first phase of the investigations are over. By the way, this is on August 9th. This is 4 months ago. Still don't know what the results are. Yes, the first phase of the external investigation is complete and is leading us to develop a good process both in dealing with this issue and in making it less likely to happen again. There's nothing else I'm at liberty to say. I can respect that. And he does acknowledge, from where you stand, this looks like a wrong approach, but from here, it makes a little more sense. Keep praying for us all and all those affected. I have a lot of respect for Rick Dubose. Here is my response, and it goes to just move on. I'm not moving on. This is my response to him, and it's my response to you. I appreciate the response. I am disappointed that nobody is willing to admit how extremely inappropriate it was to passingly refer to an ongoing sexual and spiritual abuse scandal involving Chi Alpha as a, quote, hiccup. You are correct. From where I stand, the approach being taken is wrong. I hope and I pray that I am wrong. I am praying for you and everyone involved. You must do what the Spirit convicts you to do. I will do the same. God help us all. This is not going away. Thank you. Okay, I want to come back and provide some thoughts and comments on this video that you just watched. The first thing is I do want to make a correction. The letter I read in the video, I said it was a letter from Eli Goutreau supporting Daniel Savala. That letter was actually written by Eli Stewart, and Eli Goutreau forwarded that letter to many people asking for support from Daniel Savala. In my mind, that actually makes the matter worse because, can you imagine as a pastor, can you imagine as a senior pastor, your youth pastor coming up to you and saying, hey, my buddy from Alaska, he's about to plead guilty to sexual abuse of a minor, but I think he's a good guy, and we need to all get together and write a letter supporting him and asking for leniency on his behalf. And can you imagine if you were the senior pastor and let's say your youth pastor asked you this, what senior pastor in their right mind would say, sure, go ahead, write that letter, I'll put my name on it, and I'll send it off to all my friends and all my contacts. So again, this shows the absolute failure of leadership of Eli Goutreau. And to be candid, To this day, there's certainly not been any public response from him about this letter, let alone acknowledge, let alone admitting how wrong it was. What a misstep, what a failure of leadership this was. So again, I want to be clear, it was Eli Goutreau that forwarded the letter. In my mind, that makes the matter worse. I said at the beginning of this that I had the pleasure, and I do mean that sincerely, I had the pleasure of meeting with Pastor Randy and Pastor Darla at their church, Lone Star Cowboy Church in Montgomery, Texas. I spent about 2.5 hours at their office. It was a respectful meeting. It was candid. I don't know that we necessarily came to complete agreement, but I just want to say publicly that I respect them for doing that. I'll leave whatever, if they've had any change of heart or mind or whatever, if they want to say something publicly, that's up for them to do. But I do want to say that in that meeting, essentially I asked for two things. This has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to really even to do with the advocates that are on Lion's Den and elsewhere. But here's what I said, here's what I asked Pastor Randy. First off, I asked, do you think that this is a hiccup? Again, I will let him respond if he chooses how he answered that question. But I'll just say, if you do think that it's a hiccup, then would you simply say from the pulpit that this is not a hiccup, that this is a serious matter? And I think that any pastor, especially if you are a pastor in South Texas or North Texas where this is happening, if you are pleased that the official statement, if you will, the video statement from General Superintendent Doug Clay is that this matter is a hiccup. If you don't think this is a hiccup, you need to say something. Secondly, what I asked him, and again, I will respect Pastor Randy, whatever he decides to do with that, that's for him to do. So I'll simply say the next thing that I asked was, and I asked this of any pastor, especially if you have in any way spoken out, whether publicly or privately, about what's going on, I would simply ask, have you made the same type of passionate plea for victims of abuse, whether that's spiritual, physical, sexual, any type of abuse that's been done at the hands of a pastor? As I showed in this video, the Assemblies of God is not immune to this. And I am calling, if you're a pastor, if you're someone that's watching this, I'm asking that you acknowledge that there are people that have been abused at the hands of pastors, at the hands of Assemblies of God ministers, and that needs to be acknowledged. And that would go a long way, certainly for me. So again, that's what I'm asking anyone that may think along some of these lines of, as this is just a big deal. In our conversation, there were a couple of things that came up. And I'll just say, in general, there was a lot of discussion that we had, the three of us, that we had regarding the pain that's being caused by this. And I certainly felt that they feel that I'm part of the cause of some of that pain. And I have no doubt that I've caused pain. And I don't want to cause any pain. And I understand a pastor who doesn't want to cause pain. I will say again, I have no axe to grind with anyone. I have no personal vendetta against anyone. But there's going to be pain. that's involved. The point where there could have been the least amount of pain, candidly, would have been if these leaders, Doug Clay, Tim Barker, Galen Clonch, Jeffrey Alexander, Don Way, and others, who were warned as far back as 2018 and before, Eli Goutreau, if they had properly handled Daniel Savala and Eli Stewart in 2018, there'd be a lot less pain going on. I'm sorry that that did not happen. I wish that it had happened, but it didn't. As I said, I sincerely hope that everything that I think is wrong. But I've asked for evidence to show me that I'm wrong. And I've received no evidence that anything that I've said and beyond is inaccurate. Oh, there may be some changes and some details. I may be wrong about a detail or two here and there, but in general principle, known narcissists, known abusers, known pedophiles were in leadership position. The evidence was presented, the whistle was blown, and it was actively ignored. It's really not even credible to think that that didn't happen. And while I wish that I was wrong, and I do still pray that I am wrong, I don't think I am. I think that what we are seeing is a very serious disease. It's a disease within the church body at large, and it is certainly a disease that is within the Assemblies of God movement. There's a cancer. Is it 1% or 2%? I don't know. But it's a cancer. It's there. It is vile. It is deadly. And it is aggressive in its spread. And I'm sure if you're watching this video, you have probably gone through and watched somebody go through cancer and cancer treatment. Cancer treatment is not pain-free. But if you don't treat the underlying cancer, it doesn't get better. And I've never heard anyone say, oh, you only have 1% of lung cancer. The other 99% of your cancer, of your lungs are fine. Let's just not cause any pain. Let's just keep this as quiet as we can. I think this is a serious cancer. I think it is a serious issue, and it deserves a serious response. So in closing, if you're a pastor, especially if you're a pastor with the Assemblies of God or with Chi Alpha, I think you need to be asking these questions. I think you need to be finding out what the truth is. Who knew what when, and what did they do about it? And you need to make sure that the results of your investigations are known. You cannot just be relying on somebody else's investigation. And in all candor, you can't be relying on your friends. I've demonstrated in this video people that have many, many friends in the Assemblies of God. They failed. I'm not even making an accusation they failed in a personal way, but they certainly failed in a leadership way. It's your responsibility to find out the truth, It's your responsibility to decide, do you want these people to continue to be the leaders of your organization? If you're a member of a church, especially an Assemblies of God church, you need to ask your pastor, especially if you are in North Texas or South Texas, about this situation. And I think an answer of, well, I don't know, or I'm waiting on this investigation, I'll just simply say that would not be an acceptable answer from me or from my family on a matter this important, this crucial. At the end of the day, you're going to be responsible for things, even as a member of the church, of the body. Folks, we're all equals. We are all part of the body of Christ. There's one head, it's Jesus. All of us, whether you're a pastor or a member of a congregation, whatever role that you serve in the body, you are equally important. I get it, we all have different roles and responsibilities. We certainly all have different levels of maturity. But we're all the same in the sense that we need to do what is right. So I encourage you to ask your pastors questions about what's going on. And then decide to do what it is that you want to do with those answers. I wish I didn't have to make this video, but I did. Thank you.